Today we're going to speak about the concept of Olam Haba, and before we do that, we have to have some basic information. We're going to be discussing some very deep concepts because this is the end of the road, and we've been very much preoccupied with the beginning of the road, in the middle of the road, and now we're going to come up to the final finale in one grand fell swoop, swan song, and try and pull it all together in some way and talk about Olam Haba. We've been going according to the entire scenario of the Moshe Mashiach. We've been speaking about the concept of the Mashiach ben Yosef, and the concept of Tahara, the Gula, and then the Moshe Mashiach itself, the Mashiach ben David, the Malchus ben David. We spoke a little about Chiyas HaMetim, and we spoke about Yom Hadin. And what I'd like to do is to continue the discussion about what's going to happen by Yom Hadin. Now, first of all, let's get some kind of a concept of timetable. When the Buddha first created man, the first man that he created was Adam Rishon, and Adam Rishon was the person who was supposed to fulfill the purpose of creation itself. According to the Din, according to Mitzvah Din, there was no reason to go beyond Shabbos in any circumstance, meaning that the Nesoyim of Adam Rishon, who was created on Erev Shabbos, on Friday, Erev Shabbos, the test of Adam Rishon was not to have extended further than Shabbos. Shabbos was supposed to be Olam Haba. But because of the fact that Adam sinned, I know that Hayichud, or the Midas of Rachamim, extended this into a different way. Now, what has been set aside according to the basic, what's called the parameters of Olam Haba, is that the man, the person, has 6,000 years in which to do the job. That's it. That is the span of time called Shis Alfei Shnin, or 6,000 years. If Adam fails to do it, then mankind will do it, and they will continue to try that. What? The Tikkunim, the Tikkun of Nam L'Ksufa, the Tikkun, the Tahara and the Kedusha, these Tikkunim, mankind will attempt these Tikkunim until the year 6,000. That is the final date, which means that Olam Haba must start, or the process of Olam Haba must start at that time, by the year 6,000. Now, it's very critical to have a certain understanding of this. A lot of very important ideas over here. 6,000 is the necessary end or completion of Olam Haba. When I mean Olam Haba, and I've referred to this before, I'm not only talking about the physical world. When I mean Olam Haba, I'm really talking about the whole existence that God made from the time of Adam Rishon. That's called Olam Haba. Olam Haba means the specific state of being of both the physical and spiritual universe. Olam Haba is not a place. It is not a physical concept either. Olam Haba, which means the current world, refers to a status in existence, a state of being. That's what it means. Olam Haba refers to another state of being, but it doesn't refer to a certain type of being. So therefore, Olam Haba refers to the state of being which exists from the time of Adam Rishon, and it applies to everything that was created, both the Adam and Malachim and so on. Everyone is subject to the concept of Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, everything will change so that everything will be affected in a different way. It's important to understand the essence of Olam Haba and Olam Haba, and I want to explain this because this is really what it's all about. It's a very strange conception. It's beyond the mind of man, really. But if you hold on to this thought, it will assist you also in your own performance of mitzvahs. What happened? At the outset, the Baruch Shem created the neshama in order to give it a state, a status of existence which would go on forever, and which the neshama could be masameach eternally. The Baruch Shem would create a situation where the neshama would be in a permanent state of ecstasy, of simcha, that would go on without end. That's the tachlis of the bria. In that sense, the Baruch Shem is a meitiv, or he's a chesed, the Baal Chesed. The essence of chesed, or the midas of chesed, means that the Baruch Shem, because of his love, you see, or the kind of love that he has, wants to create a being and give him the ultimate simcha. The being doesn't have to do anything in return. It's non-conditional, unconditional. That's what chesed is. It's loving kindness in an unconditional way. Because of the problem of Nam L'Ksufa, because of the fact that the Neshama says to the Rebbeinu Shalom, I can't handle that simcha, I have to do something about it myself, because I'm like you, and I won't go into the depths of this. The Neshama says, insists, in fact, that I have to in some way contribute to this eternal simcha. Because if I don't in some way help create it, I will not be able to appreciate it. The Neshama will feel a certain, not a real shame, but it's a certain lessening of its esteem. That's called Nam L'Ksufa. It's a lowering of the esteem of the Neshama. Okay. So what happens is, obviously, Midas HaChesed is not sufficient anymore. It's not enough for God to create a Neshama and to give it eternal simcha, because the Neshama cannot handle it. Which means that the Midas HaChesed is not what? It's not complete. It's not good. It cannot function alone. So from the Midas HaChesed emanates the Midas HaDin. From it, not outside of it. So that what happens is, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, fine, you will have this future state, but you will have to earn it. Meaning, that this chesed which I give you is no longer unconditional. It is now conditional on your efforts. That's din. Din is chesed b'tnai. See that? It's not something different. It's chesed b'tnai. It's conditional chesed. And that's what happened with the neshama. That's the concept of midas hadin. Which means that now the neshama has to earn it. If the neshama has to earn it, it means a whole new series of circumstances, a new state of affairs has to be created. The neshama now has to create a situation where the person, the neshama, the person, and the person who evolves with it, now has a chance to create his Olam Haba or Simcha, which means that now the neshama has to go into a guf, you see, and the neshama and the guf have to come together, and the person, who's a combination of both, have to earn the Olam Haba by choosing in two different directions. Well, if you got two different directions, that means the Rebbeinu Shalom has to create two options. You see, one option is God, the other option is something which can, in a certain sense, compete against God, and that power to compete against God is called the Yetzer Hara. That's the essence of the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara was created to provide an option to the Rebbeinu Shalom himself, the staggering thing, you see, so that you will have the ability to go off the derech. And the reason why we want you to have the ability, the reason why the Rebbeinu Shalom wants you to have the ability, is so that by going on the derech, you will have created your own choice and your own Olam Haba. Okay? Very basic. So the essence of Olam Haba is to provide a circumstance in which you can create your own dvekus to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the Rebbeinu Shalom therefore has to withdraw from the world and hide, so to speak, behind the physical world, and you have to bring them back. That means that the essence of Olam Hazeh is Chasan. The essence of this world is Chasan. What is Chasan? Chasan means the relative absence of God's presence in the world. That means when you look at the world and you look at everything about it, you cannot clearly see the hand of God anymore. That's the concept of Chasan, and that's what Olam Hazeh is about. That's the first critical factor of Olam Hazeh. Don't forget it. It is the essence of Olam Hazeh, the concept of Chasan. The Rebbeinu Shalom, who is all existence, now creates a world in which he no longer is dominant or appears, at least at the surface. This is an extraordinary feat. This is no mean trick. It's no mean trick for the very process of existence to vacate existence. You see, that's no mean thing. But the Rebbeinu Shalom does that. At least Kavayochol, he appears to have done that. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't disappear or withdraw. As far as we can tell, it seems to be that he's done that, because he puts a filter between us and him. So it looks like he's not here anymore. But the concept is withdrawal, the removal or the withdrawal of ruchnius, so that now we will have the options of choice. The key idea is chasan, meaning that God now is outside the world. The concept of chasan yields the notion of the Yetzer Hara. That's what the Yetzer Hara is. The Yetzer Hara is nothing more than the withdrawal of the Rebbeinu Shalom's covered or his presence. That is the Yetzer Hara. Now that is also called the Nachash. Why? Because the Nachash who tried to seduce Haba, in essence, was the physical personification of the Yetzer Hara. The Nachash basically is metaphorically, or more than metaphorically, to some extent, it's a clear connection called with the Yetzer Hara, or the seductive force, the evil seductive force in the world. The Nachash, therefore, is a synonym in the high hashkafa to the Yetzer Hara. When the Baruch created Olam Hazeh, he created Chassan, which means that he created the power of the Nachash to seduce and to create an option to himself. Okay, this is clear. What the Baruch says to man is, your job is to what? Get rid of the Chassan. Your job is to be mashlim the world. Bring it back to a state of perfection. How? By being dovek to me, and by choosing me. You see, through the mitzvahs, you will bring my koyach, or my power, back into the world. And the hester, or the concealment, which has what? Which has masked my presence, and my yichud, you see, will no longer exist. So therefore, God creates the world of chassan, you see, so that chassan will be removed by man. And if man removes that chassan, he will have done it himself. Not God will have done it. You will have done it. You will have removed the concept of chassan. You will have brought ruchnius back into the world, and you will have created a world of ruchnius. That's the solution or the resolution to the entire problem of Nam Sufa. Therefore, the purpose of man is to what? Is to masakin the chassan, to what? To correct the chassan, or more specifically, to mavatl the Yetzer Hara, the Nachash, to destroy the existence of the option of God, or the existence of the seduction, the evil seduction from the world itself. You see, how do you do that? By being krivish your Yetzer. By what? By subjugating your Yetzer Hara, you will eventually annihilate him. That's the name of the game. Annihilation. It is your job to annihilate the Yetzer Hara. The annihilation of the Yetzer Hara, which is called the bittul of the Nachash, or the cancellation of the Nachash of the serpent, is the beginning of Olam Haba. Because what is Olam Haba? Olam Haba, in essence, is a world of perfection. What does that mean, perfection? It is a world where God's presence is totally known, without any suffix, without doubt, without any masks. So the simcha is enormous. The perception of the yichud of the Baruch is incredible. But that's a world without a Nachash. It's a world without a chassan. That's why Gan Eden is not really Olam Haba. Some people think, what happens when a person dies? Where does he go? So they say, well, he goes to Gan Eden. But that's Olam Haba. That's not Olam Haba. What's the difference between a Gan Eden and Olam Haba? What is the difference? When a person dies, his neshama goes to Gan Eden until the body deteriorates in the ground, and then he can come back on the resurrection of the dead. But why is it? What is Gan Eden? In Gan Eden, the neshamas are tremendously mesameach. They are mesameach, and they do certain things which are similar to Olam Haba, but it's not Olam Haba. Why not? What is the difference between Gan Eden and Olam Haba? Because Gan Eden, as great as it is, exists in the what? In the state where the Nachash still rules. Except that it's a spiritual world. The Shomas on Gan Eden have a simcha, and they have tanugim. They enjoy the simcha of the dveikus and things that they have there. But it doesn't matter. The fact is that the state of existence itself has within it a Nachash. So there's a certain part of God's power or presence which is not revealed. So no matter how high Gan Eden is, it still is contaminated, you see, with a tumah of some sort that will not allow a pure connection to the Baruch. Olam Haba is that point in time which will be pure, without a Nachash, without any shade or nuance of chassan. So that's absolute perfection, and that has never happened yet. That's why if you ask, where is Olam Haba? It's nowhere, because it doesn't exist. Olam Haba is not a place. You see, it's not even a time really. It's a state of being which does not exist yet. So Ramchal says very beautifully, after a certain point in time, after the year 6000 and so on, the Baruch then will be mechadish es olamai. Very nice the way he says it. The Baruch will renew his world into a different kind of world. Can we imagine what that world is? No. It is impossible for you to know what that world is. It is impossible. Why? Well, it's a world where there's a lot of simcha, there's a lot of ruchnis and so on. That's not what it is. Why? Because it is a world where time and space itself will be different. Time will be different. Time is not like it is now. The essence of this world is chassan. The essence of this world is to give you the opportunity to choose and to grow, which means that time is the distance between one point in existence and another point in existence. So you can grow and develop. It is possible to develop. What's called maturational processes are possible, or growth is possible. What's the essence of growth? The essence of growth is that there's something about your being which is altered in some way. Your state of existence is being altered, so that existence itself is not final. That's the essence of Olam Hazeh. The essence of Olam Hazeh is that the Baruch Shem says all existence is temporary. Within existence itself, the fabric of the existence is temporary. It is not final. And because of the fact that it's not final or engraved in stone, it can move. Existence can move from point A to point B. It's not that you move from point A to point B, you see, or you get bigger or smarter. It's not that. It's much deeper than that. Your existence moves from point A to point B. So that when you do a mitzvah, you are not the same being before and after that mitzvah. The mitzvah of existence is a different aspect, you see. It's existence which moves. We cannot understand that. It's too subtle. Which means that the ability of existence to move is woven into the fabric of time and space. Time, the way we experience it now, allows existence to go from A to B. But in Olam Haba, this is no longer necessary. Because existence doesn't move in Olam Haba. Because there's no Bechira. There's no Chasson anymore. Because that which has been done is done. So existence itself takes a final stamp. And that's it. No growth. It's a no-growth situation. So the experience of time in that world is different than the experience of time in this world. You see. Very important concept. That's why we can't begin to understand what Olam Haba is. Because we cannot understand a world where existence does not move, at least linear direction, from bottom to high, you see, from one point to another. We cannot understand. Our world, the essence of our world, is the linear progression, or the linear expansion, or confirmation of existence, from point A to point B. Olam Haba, there is no linear expansion. Existence is fixed and stabilized, so that therefore time takes on a different type of flavor. What is time like in that time? At that point, we do not know. Nobody knows. That's the highest malachim knows. And that's why the Gemara says, Ayin lo yivor. No eye has ever seen Olam Haba. This is the idea. And this is the idea you have to hold on to. We're dealing with the problem of existence itself. Something called dynamic existence and something called static existence. Olam Hazeh is a condition where existence is dynamic. It's capable of movement or growth. Olam Haba is a condition where existence is static. It cannot proceed or progress in any sense. What you have, what you are, is what you will be forever. Slightly thought. Forever. You see, it's like if I told you, you have 1 hour to find yourself an apartment, and the apartment you find is what you will live forever. You will be sure that you will be running around not from a studio apartment or 1 bedroom, but as much as you can, because you know that what you find after 1 hour you are stuck with forever. That's a very, very powerful thought, and that's what Olam Hazeh is. The Baruch Shem says, I give you a certain amount of time to build your makom in Olam Haba, but once Olam Haba arrives, it is over, and you live at that point. That is your fixed state of existence. The Netzach Nisach, and you could never do a thing about it. So that if somebody's higher than you, there's nothing you can do.
Every minute counts.
Every minute therefore counts in the most utmost degree. Because, like they say, in the business we're making, time is money, right? Mistake. Time is not. Time is existence. Much worse. The question is, will there be jealousy in Olam Haba? Obviously there cannot be jealousy in Olam Haba. 2 reasons. 1, if you're busy being jealous about somebody else, you can't have a simcha yourself. Olam Haba is obviously a place of simcha, not sa. You see. But there's a much deeper reason. You will never be jealous in Olam Haba, even if someone has an incredible thing. Why not? Because it has to do with your nam k'tufa. What was your complaint to the Baruch Shem to begin with? I can't handle something that I haven't produced. I can only be happy with something that I have made. Correct? Therefore in Olam Haba, you will get exactly what you have made. You will not want somebody else's chelik. Because the old problem of Nam Nexufa comes back. And that's the reason why it started in the first place. You see the point? There is no jealousy in Olam Haba. Because you cannot tolerate that which you have not earned. Because that's why the whole thing started in the first place. The Rebbeinu Shalom through his mitzvah chesed wanted to give something that you didn't earn. And you weren't able to tolerate it. So when somebody else is much higher than you see, you will not be jealous. You will not want it. Because to be higher than what you are in terms of what you deserve is that tsar. The tsar to have something you haven't earned. You see. Not to want something that's not yours. It's a different story. The question is what we're going to feel in Olam Haba. We won't feel any jealousy. Will we feel any charata? Will we feel bad of what we did? It's difficult to answer that question. All I can say is that there won't be any tsar. You won't feel bad as such. You know. And I cannot give you the emotional feel of what Olam Haba is in that sense. But what we do know is Olam Haba is a makom of simcha, not of tsar. So obviously all those human emotions in which we're subject to now, we won't have in that sense.
What about all the Jesus?
In Olam Haba, the only connection that remains is the connection between a Rebbe and a Talmud. I believe in a man and a wife. There is no connection between father and son, or daughter, brother and sister, uncle or nephew, Zayda or grandfather and grandchildren. These disappear. They do not disappear in the Yemos Mashiach. Those distinctions are still recognizable, but in Olam Haba they all disappear. The only thing that does not disappear is between a man and a wife, as a zivug, and between a Rebbe and a Talmud. You see, because the thing is, the reason why the Rebbe and a Talmud, because a Rebbe gives a Talmidim or Talmidos, whatever the story is, a higher chilik in Olam Haba. So that cause and effect relationship will exist, because it directly affects your status in Olam Haba. You see. So, if you want to maintain a connection with people that you are close to, teach them something, or learn something from them. Okay, so that's the basic idea, the concept of chasson and the concept of shleimus, the bittul of the nachash. And it's important to hold that in mind. So therefore, Olam Haba will be a totally different kind of thing. What I'd like to discuss here, okay, now is how will Olam Haba arrive? How will it arrive? What happens? Suddenly, bingo, one day it's here, Olam Hazeh, and the next moment Olam Haba? No. The notion here is that Olam Haba will arrive progressively, which means that Olam Hazeh will change into Olam Haba progressively. The Yetzer Hara will slowly annihilate, or become annihilated progressively. That's the concept. The construction or the creation of Olam Haba is termed Zichuch HaGuf. That's really what it is. Zichuch means purification, Guf means other body. But Guf really in this case means the whole physical world and the whole state of Olam Hazeh. Zichuch HaGuf is the progressive transformation of Olam Hazeh into Olam Haba. And what I'd like to do is discuss exactly what is the nature of that progression. What is the relationship of the Guf and the Neshama, or the physical world and the spiritual world, at this time in Olam Hazeh? Very simply, the Guf, or the physical reality, is dominant. How do we know it's dominant? Because you've got to do what your body says, or else you die. You listen to your body. The tenets and the demands, the imperatives of Olam Hazeh are dominant. You're not in touch with Ruchnius. What are you in touch with? You're not in touch with Ruchnius. You're in touch with what? Gashmius. So therefore, it is the Guf which is considered, or the physical world which is considered the dominant aspect of reality. The spiritual world, or the Neshama, is recessive in that way. It means that its power or its presence is inferior in a sense. You feel the needs of your body primarily, and this is what governs you. You also feel the needs of your neshama. If you didn't, you wouldn't have any bechira. But the needs of the neshama are recessive, you see, with respect to the body, because it is a physical universe which dominates Olam Haba. But the creation of Olam Haba is nothing more than a changing ratio of this dominant recessive relationship, interaction between Guf and Neshama. So that what we're dealing with is an inverse transformation, where first the Guf is dominant and the Neshama is recessive, and what we want to do is invert that, so that the Neshama becomes dominant and the Guf becomes recessive. Now what does that feel like? What's happening there? By the year 6000, two critical things will have happened. Rather, three critical things will have happened. Three very important things. One, the world will have achieved a state of Taharas HaNefesh, and that will be at the time of Mashiach and Yosef. When the Geula happens, the world will be Zeicha to the Madreg of Taharas HaNefesh, the Milo, the circumcision of the lathe. That means that there will be no impediments or obstructions to the act of awareness itself. No longer will you be subject to irrational impulses as such, without making true free choices. The Tahara of the Nefesh means that the Neshama or the Nefesh will no longer be covered with a klipa or with a tumah, which is able to dominate it in some way. That's the first step. That happens by the Geula. The essence of the Mashiach ben Yosef, as we've said, is to matar the Nefesh of Klal Yisrael. He is the instrument of the Tahara of the Nefesh at the outset. When the Baruch Shem says, "Umol Hashem es levavchem," and I will circumcise the heart, this is the secret tachlis of the Mashiach ben Yosef. So therefore, the first step is Tahara. Remember, there are two steps, two tikkunim: Tahara, to remove the tumah, and Kedusha, to elevate the ruchnis into the highest level. But there are two separate steps. So we start with Tahara. First step is Tahara, elimination of the tumah on the neshama. That happens with the Geula. Second step of Tahara, Tchiyas HaMesim, where the tumah leaves the body. You see, so that now all the bodies of all the people are in the same condition as Adam Rishon before the Chet. People no longer die, because death is nothing more than an attempt, a corrective attempt to remove the tumah in the guf, the tikkun of the zoyama which resides in the guf. Second step, Tchiyas HaMesim, it occurs somewhere in the time of the Mashiach ben David. So there are the two taharas taking place. First the tahara of the nefesh, and then the tahara of the guf, of the body. But there's one more tahara that has to take place. The tahara of the world, or existence of the bria. And that has not yet occurred. So that the zoma, or the kilkul, the damage, still resides in the world. It no longer resides in the neshama. It no longer resides in the guf. But it resides in existence in the world itself. That means that there is yet one more step to tahara. Okay? That happens in the year 6000. And then just briefly describe that, and then I'll come back to this concept of progressive tahara. What happens in the year 6000? In the year 6000, what the Baruch Shem does is that he takes the entire physical world, all the worlds, basically, which are rooted in that, and then he reduces them back to Tov V'Vohu. They become unformed and void. He voids them, so that suddenly existence becomes formless. So you get frightened and say, what happens to all the people? Right? They are all removed, okay, and placed in what's called the Olam HaNeshamas. All the people who live in the world and who are zochah to go to Olam Haba are now in their bodies. You're now in your body, you see, and you're living in the Yemot Mashiach. It is now at the end of the Yemot Mashiach, in the year 6000, Yom HaDin has happened. Fine. You got the lucky news that you're going to Olam Haba, the incredible lucky news that you're going to Olam Haba, and then suddenly the Baruch Shem says to everyone, line up. You know, so the whole human race lines up. I'm being a little cynical here, but the whole human race lines up. And suddenly what happens is that the guf begins to change in certain ways, which we'll get into in a minute in detail. But the fact is that the Baruch Shem then takes all of mankind, lifts them up, and puts them in a special spot called Olam HaNeshamas, or the world of the Neshamas. Okay? There they live for 1,000 years. And for that 1,000 years, the bria, or existence itself, becomes unformed. You see? And it's like the death of reality, so to speak. And during that time, the tumah, the zoyma, leaves the bria. Because remember, the zoyma, which is the tumah that was produced from chait, has to get out. Because you cannot elevate the physical world into a spiritual unless you first remove the tumah which invaded the world through the chatoim. And that's what happened. So therefore there are 3 steps to the tahara. This is a progressive tahara. This is not yet Olam Haba. Olam Haba is a progressive kedusha or progressive zichoch. That's a different concept, you see. Olam Haba means that the physical world is slowly becoming a spiritual world. The physical world itself is becoming the spiritual world. That's called progressive zichoch, or the purification or transformation of the physical world. We're not talking about that, you see. We're talking about progressive tahara, which is the removal, not the elevation of the physical, but the removal of the damage or the kilkel. It's a different concept. First step, Taharas HaNefesh, by the Geula. Second step, Taharas HaGuf, by Tchias HaMeisim. Third step, Taharas Olam, or Taharas HaBriya, in the 6,000th year. That's what it says in the Medrash. Shis Alpei Shnin, the world will be 6,000 years, B'chad Chorov, and in the 7,000th year, it will be destroyed. But not mankind. The world will be destroyed. So that in the beginning of what? Of the 7,000th year, which is actually the 8,000th year, the world will again be what? Brought back into its form. So that's the Tchias HaMeisim of the world. Just like we all have to have what's called the resurrection of the dead, there's got to be something called the resurrection of reality. So that the physical universe will also be resurrected. But when it's resurrected, there is no more tumah in it at all. And the physical universe now is pure. It's not high yet, it's not elevated, but it's pure. There's no more tumah in it. Now we can start the progression into Olam, to become Olam Haba. So we're dealing with the progressive tahara. Now this is a very, very deep thing, a very deep, mysterious thing, because what this tells you is this thing. It tells you that the tikkun of Yosef, which is tahara, will not be finished until after the Yemot HaMashiach, which means that the Mashiach ben Yosef goes on along with the Mashiach ben David until Olam Haba. You see, the Mashiach ben Yosef does not finish by the Geula. We thought that the Mashiach ben Yosef brings the Geula and then he packs, kind of retires from the scene, and the Mashiach ben David arrives and becomes the king of Israel, and then he does his job. That's not what it is. The Mashiach ben Yosef still is there, because it's through his koichos that the continuing tahara takes place. He is the pivotal instrument of any type of tahara. And since that tahara doesn't go until way after the Yemot Mashiach, into the 6,000th year, which is the finale of the Yemot Mashiach. The Yemot Mashiach ends in the year 6,000, it's over. You know, both Mashiachim retire, in essence. You know, as Mashiachim. But the notion that he couldn't continue. And there are very deep reasons for that. Very deep reasons. And the critical reason is the following. That's the mystery of the 2 Mashiachs, or the 2 Tikkunim. Once Adam Rishon sins, then these 2 Mashiachs must forever coexist. That's the law. The 2 Mashiachs will be as one in my hand. That's what the Baruch says. Why is that? It has to do with the nature of existence. I won't go into it. I gave the shir about almost a year and a half ago already. And I won't go into that. The concept of the 2 tikkunim. But the notion is that you cannot build Kedusha anymore without Yosef. Yosef is David's wheelchair. Once Adam sinned, before Adam sinned, Adam was in the madrega of David, the Mashiach ben David. Once he sinned, then forever David needs Yosef as his crutches. Until the tahara is finished. Until the end of the world. Until the tahara is finished. Once that happens, then both are no longer necessary, and then once Olam Haba, it's a whole different story. Olam Haba has no tikkunim. Olam Haba is a fixed state. But until that time, it is the 2 Mashiachim that must be. And this is the notion, the concept of the progressive tahara. You see. Now, up to now, I've been discussing the concept of progressive tahara, the removal of zoma, or the removal of kilkel, from the neshama, from the guf, from the bria. Okay? But that's not the only thing that's going on. In the time of the Mashiach ben David, what's happening? The Mashiach ben David is doing the next critical tikkun, which is what? Which is to bring down as much Kedusha as possible. It is the Mashiach ben David who is assisting Klal Yisrael in bringing down the power which will transform transform the physical world into an Olam Haba. That's the Mashiach ben David. The Mashiach ben David cannot do it as long as there's the Tumah. So you need the Mashiach ben Yosef to clean up the mess. But even if you clean up the mess, it's not enough. You need energy to go up. You see. The Mashiach ben Yosef brings the entire distance from minus to zero. But if you want to go to Olam Haba, you got to go from zero to plus. That's the Mashiach ben David. So that essentially, the Mashiach ben David is involved in the tikkun of Kedusha, which means the acquisition of the necessary spiritual power to transform reality into an Olam Haba. And all this is done by the year 6000. By the year 6000, what will happen is all the energy, the spiritual power that was necessary to create an Olam Haba for Klal Yisrael will be there, and the job is finished. The Kedusha job, or the acquisition of spiritual kochos, which is needed to transform a physical world, will be finished by the year 6000. That's why after the year 6000, there is no more Bechira anymore, there's no more Yetzer Hara. Everything goes. The world is no longer like it was. Why? Why is the Yetzer Hara removed? Why is there no more Bechira? Because it's no longer necessary. The energy that was necessary to build an Olam Haba is here already. The job is over. You see, we all punch out our cards and we go home. The only thing left is the Tahara of the Bria, which takes place between the years 6000 and 7000. And that goes for 1000 years. But that's a Tahara process. It is not a Kedusha process. The acquisition of Kedusha is finished. It remains only to ultimately retire the world, the Bria, and then we finish the second phase of the job. Okay, so by the year 6000, we will have done what? Accomplished three things. We will have purified Umatar the Nefesh. We will have cleansed the Guf. Those two things. Taharat HaNefesh, Taharat HaGuf. And we will do what Mashiach ben David does. We will have acquired all the energy necessary to build Olam Haba. Enter the year 6000. We have two more things to do. We have to continue the Tahara of the world to finish off the Tahara job. That's between the year 6000 and 7000. And once that happens, it starts the last and greatest job of all, which is using the energy, using the spiritual energy to actually transform Olam Hazeh. That's called Zichoch. That really starts in the year 7000. It actually starts before. It starts from the people before. But in the world, it starts in 7000. The Neshamas, or the people who live with their guf in the Olam HaNeshamas, you see, while the world is already what? Destroyed. Their Zichuch is starting already. But the Zichuch of the world and everyone doesn't really start in earnest until the year 7000. Now let's talk about the year from 6000 to 7000. What is it going to be like? Okay? That's very difficult to say. For the simple reason that there will no more physical universe. There's not a physical universe anymore. All mankind will live in a spiritual plane. Will you have a guf? Of course he's going to have a guf. Because the guf goes with you. But wait, how can a guf live on a spiritual plane? Right? All people, all mankind will live just like Moshe Rabbeinu lived when he went up to the mountain for 40 days. You remember what happened when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to receive the Torah? He didn't eat, sleep, drink, nothing. He lost all physical needs. He still had his body. His body was, in a sense, physical. But the needs of the body were suddenly submerged. And all he felt was the need of the neshama. It's like Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went to the mountain to receive the Torah, with the guf and the neshama together. And the guf suddenly became recessive, and the neshama dominant. So that even though there were bodily needs, but they were totally submerged by the neshama. It's the neshama that took over, and the neshama says, I now will govern. You know, whatever eating and drinking takes place, or whatever story is a neshama-dika thing. It's a spiritual eating and drinking, you see. It went from the yichud of the guf into the yichud of the neshama. The neshama took the same aspects of the guf and spiritualized it. But the guf was still there, and it could still be rejuvenated to a physical. It's simply shut off. Physical system, guf system, shut down. It didn't close down, it shut down temporarily. You see? That's what happened with Moshe Rabbeinu when he went up to the mountain to receive the Torah. His physical system shut down temporarily, and he no longer felt the tightness of his guf. The neshama system opened up, and it became the dominant force. But you can still rejuvenate the physical system. That's what's going to happen between 6,000 and 7,000. People, wherever they are, will shut down the physical system, but not eliminate it. So that we will no longer satisfy our body, but we will still feel an aspect of the need submerged. But the dominant aspect is the neshama. The recessive aspect is now the guf. That's till the year 7,000. When the year 7,000 arrives, the world has a tahara. It is then reformed. There's a resurrection of the world, and God reforms the physical world into a world without zayamah at all, in any sense. All mankind is then put onto that world, and now starts the process of ultimate transformation, where all the energy that was acquired from before is now used to build the Olam Haba. What you now see, therefore, is the progression from the year 7,000 and on. Okay, that progression can be reflected, understood in the status of the neshama and the guf. So let's follow that progression carefully. When the world is destroyed in the 7th millennium, really, or in between 6 and 7,000, the 7th millennium, the body becomes recessive, the neshama becomes dominant. By the time the 8,000th year rolls around, you see, which is the 9th millennium, it's the 8,000th year after B'yis Olam, suddenly a new level of zichuk happens, and the guf loses its recessive notions. You see, what does that mean? It means that the physical needs go. It's not that the system is shut down temporarily, it's closed. So that you no longer feel a physical need of the body. You live in the body, your neshama lives in the body, but all physical needs evaporate. Totally. And the only thing you feel is the dominant need of the neshama. That's why in the 8th millennium, you see, or between 7,000 and 8,000, the guf merely has a presence. You feel the guf, you still feel the guf, you see, but you no longer feel any drive. Every drive is lost. Now let's explain that. What does it mean that the physical drives are gone? It simply means that the physical drives are transformed into the spiritual form. The neshama now has that same drive in its ruchnistic counterpart. That's what happens. It's a much deeper way to look at it. It doesn't mean that the tithe of the guf disappear. Every tithe of a guf is a spiritual taiva in lower form. And I want to just introduce the concept of what's called yichud ha-mestater and yichud ha-mesgaler. Very, very critical concept. It is the essence of Olam Haba. And if you understand this concept, you'll be in a much better position to be kovish or yetzer hara. There's only one way to have simcha or hana. There's no other way. All toiv is connected in some way to Dveikus to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Some perception of him and his unity is what gives us a simcha. But there are two aspects to that simcha. We can either be aware that it is God behind that simcha, or we can be disconnected from God and just feel the yichud, the simcha itself, not realizing that it comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's called yichud ha-mestater and yichud ha-mesgaler. The neshama, the simcha of the neshama, or the hana of the neshama, is that it experiences the yichud of God, the incredible unity of the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's what it experiences. It not only experiences this presence of God, the Shekhinah really, and the unity, the yichud of this, but it experiences the yachid, or the echad behind the yichud. It experiences God. It knows that God is behind this power. It not only feels the power, but it knows that it is the power of God. Two concepts. It feels the power, that's called the yichud, and it knows the power, the being behind it, it knows the echad. So it knows the echad and the yichud together, which means that the resultant hana or simcha is astronomical. When the Rebbeinu created the physical world, he didn't create a new form of goodness. He took the same yichud that the neshama feels. But all he did was that he what? He hid. Which means that you no longer can feel the echad, just the yichud. That's all. God. You no longer know that it is God behind that simcha or hana or pleasure. It is the pleasure itself. Music. When you listen to music, you see, what happens? You hear a series of sounds in perfect balance and harmony. What's between music and noise? Noise are tones or sounds irregular, chaotic. Music are tones in beautiful systematic organization, according to harmony and whatever the story is, you see. Every note follows every other note and creates a whole, a configuration. It's the yichud, it's the gestalt or the configuration of the whole. It's where they all come together that creates the beauty. Okay? When you taste something which is delicious, all the ingredients come together to produce a perfect blended taste. That's the yichud of eating. The yichud of seeing. When you see a beautiful sight, all the colors and shades and everything comes together, the perfect balance so that everything fits, beauty emerges. All beauty and therefore all pleasure is based on the concept of yichud, or oneness. Whose oneness? The oneness of God. Except that when it's physical, you don't feel God, you don't see God. You eat a delicious piece of food and you don't know that the taste that you feel is being plugged into the Baruch Shalom, because God is hidden and absent. The neshama eats too, but the difference is that when the neshama eats, it doesn't eat the food, it eats the light or the spiritual power behind the food. But that light which is behind the food contains the knowledge of the Baruch Shalom also, so the light is incredibly powerful, you see. But it's the same thing. Eat food, eat light. You see, it's eating, it's absorption of that. But you can either absorb it as a guf or absorb it as a neshama. If you absorb it as a neshama, it is the most powerful form, because there's no separation between that unity and God. You see, that's called yichud hamizgala, or the revealed yichud. But when God created the physical universe, He said, "I'm going to give you another option to me." Next to took another option to me. What the Baruch Shalom really said was, "I'm going to give you me in a lower form, where I hide." But it's the Baruch Shalom says, there is no Tov beyond me. There's no other Tov. There's no other Simcha. I'm the source of all existence. I'm the source of all goodness and Tov. There's nothing else. Ain't no Vadai. There's nothing else. So what does that mean that the Baruch Shalom created another Simcha? The Baruch Shalom had to do it in a way, Kaviyach. Why? Because the Baruch Shalom wants to create an option to Himself. That's the Yetzer Hara. So the question is, where does the Yetzer Hara get its power from? Who is the Yetzer Hara? The Yetzer Hara is God hiding. It's not a different God or something else. It is God hiding. So you only see one half of what He's given you. And you don't see the Baruch Shalom anymore, so you think it's yourself. But it's the Baruch Shalom you're plugging into. That's the option. The neshama eats. It eats ore, and it absorbs ore. That ore is full. It has the yichud and the echad wedded. It's fully cognizant to the power and the existence of the Baruch Shalom. So therefore the perception of the yichud is awesome. But when God wanted to make another option, He said, "I'm going to hide all this yichud, and I'm going to give you a little piece of this yichud. And when I hide, you're going to think that that yichud is you." That's your Yetzer Hara. That's called yichud hamistater, or the hidden unity, where you can feel the power of God, or feel the pleasure that emanates, without knowing that it's God behind it. So there is no such thing as a Yetzer Hara. That's the point. If you think that when you run after the Yetzer Hara, you're running away from God, you're mistaken. You're running towards the Baruch Shalom, but you're damaging yourself, because you are investing into a what? A yichud, which is half-baked or half-measure. It's dangerous to do that. You see, you are condemning yourself to a level of yichud where God is what? Distance from. That's the danger of the Yetzer Hara. The danger of the Yetzer Hara is not that it is not God. Everything is God. The danger of the Yetzer Hara is that you are accessing and you are connecting yourself to something, you see, which eliminates the Baruch Shalom. So by doing that, by connecting to the half yichud or the hidden yichud, you in essence are distancing yourself from the Baruch Shalom and creating a barrier between you and Him. But you're still plugging into Him. There's no way around it. That's why when the Rishonim realized that God is the Yetzer Hara, it would be the most astounding shock of all. Because they thought that with the Yetzer Hara, with the physical world, they were able to get away from the Baruch Shem. And they were able to be independent from God. They were able to be their own mighty and arrogant people. And then they're going to realize that God is the Yetzer Hara. The Baruch Shem, the power of the Yetzer Hara is the power of the Baruch Shem, except that it's a half measure. Therefore, the transformation of the guf to the neshama is not that suddenly the guf loses its taivas, and suddenly there are a new set of taivas of the neshama. Like the neshama has a whole new set of desires that the guf doesn't have. No, it's the same thing, except one is half and one is full. That's what it is. So what's happening in the transformation of the guf to Olam Haba is that the mask or the barrier is leaving. That's what's going on. So that when you only felt halfway, you can now feel full. What's the quantitative difference between the half and the full? You see, is the half 50 and the full 100? No. The half is 50 and the full is 500 billion. The difference between Yichra Mizgala and Yichra Mistata is a ratio which your mind cannot even conceive. The difference of the neshama eating the same piece of food that you ate, but the neshama feeding that or absorbing the ruchnis behind that is a difference from a quantum leap from a whole different plane. And it's not that the neshama has a better time. It is so vastly more powerful that it has a whole different experience. That's what it means. That's why Olam Haba is so different than Olam Hazeh. Because Olam Hazeh is Yichra Mistata. It's hidden Yichud. It's half Yichud. You see. So all the people who are running after Olam Hazeh, what are they running after? They have no idea what true pleasure is and what really is waiting. If you think you're having a good time here, and they say you ain't seen nothing yet, you see, because the ratio is incredible. This is like an infinitesimal. Once you're able to experience the Yichud HaMizgala, the revealed Yichud, and that's what it is. Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh is like a seat to swing, you know. As you swing from Olam Hazeh to Olam Haba, the yichud shifts so that the barriers begin to fall away, the physicality begins to go away, and suddenly the pure light becomes visible, and the simcha is awesome. That's the essence of Zichar HaGuf, the purification of the body. What it means is the ability of the person to experience the same physical pleasures on a purely spiritual plane. Key idea here is that the Yetzer Hara is the Yetzer Tov in half. It is not another option. You see, it's not another way of doing it. It is the Yetzer Tov, but in masked form. That's what happens. When the Yetzer Tov puts on a mask, it looks like the Yetzer Hara. Now you may say, okay, so why is it dangerous? Because it is dangerous to connect to Yichud in masked form. Because what you do is you create a permanent situation where you distance yourself from the pleasure from the Baruch Shem himself. And that's very dangerous for the neshama. Because it means that the neshama can then not go ahead and re-experience the real simcha. Because it's now confined or condemned to the half Yichud. And that's a destructive thing. Okay, let's go on here. Okay, so now we understand the concept. In the between the 7th and 8,000th year, what you're dealing with is the guf will simply have a presence, but not a need. You will not feel the needs of the guf anymore. Why? Not because they will really have disappeared, but they will have been siphoned off into the needs of the neshama, so that now you can feel them from the Yichra Mizgala end, and not the Yichra Mistata end. You see, the mask which is on it, the Sitra Achra, the Yetzer Hara, the Nachash, is slowly dissolving. You see, the mask is what's dying. The Chason, it's the death of the mask. It's the death of the wall or the barrier between the Yichud and the Echad. That's what's dying in the process of Zichor. Nothing new is being created, except that which has separated us from the Baruch Shem is being dissolved. That's what's happening. So what we used to feel at a halfway, we can begin to feel in a pure way. Okay, so we now feel the presence of the guf, and of course the neshama is very dominant. Now we finally go up to the highest level, which is between the 8,000 and the 9,000 year. Okay? And what happens, finally, not only does the need of the guf evaporate and transform spiritually, but even the presence of the guf. So that what happens is the guf feels just like your skin. Do you feel your skin? No. But is it there? Yes. When someone looks at you, you see skin. But are you aware of skin? No. That's how, what? That's the bittul of the guf. The guf will have what? Decreased in any significant aspect. The mask will have disappeared to such an extent that it doesn't block anything anymore. At all. But it still just lies there. That's all. It's like a dead mask. That's all it is. It's like your skin. And that's how it remains forever. So that what happens is the whole person is in a neshama and the guf becomes the skin. It has no need of its own. It has no need. It has no presence. You don't even feel it. You see, between the 7,000 and the 8,000 year, you don't feel anything in guf anymore. Nobody remembers what's like to eat. Eating is passé. It's hard to believe. Eating is gone. No more diet problems. Believe me. No diet problems. No overweight problems. In any sense. But, which is excited. Gotta laugh for that. The point is, no more eating. But you still feel the presence of the guf. You still feel a certain barrier, a certain equal. There's a barrier, there's a resistance to the true simcha of the light. You see. This is the concept. The light is either in the form of spiritual eating or physical eating. Okay? As long as the light is in the form of physical eating, you're going to feel this physical drive to eat. Finally, one day what's going to happen is that you're going to feel no need to eat anymore. In any sense. Well, you're not going to be eating at that point in time either. Because as I said, the guf is totally recessive. You see. So its needs are submerged. But what's going to happen is between the 7th and 8,000 years is that you no longer feel a drive to eat. The memory of that physical drive will be gone. But you will still feel a slight resistance in eating spiritually. You see, the resistance is no longer in the creation of a physical drive, it now exists in the what? In the slight resistance of the spiritual drive. You see how it shifts? You see the slow death of the physical? You see the progression. Very important to understand the progression. You go from a dominant physical need, where it needs to be fulfilled. That's the lower step, you see. That's Olam Hazeh. Then in the year 6,000, what happens? The physical need to eat is there, but it's submerged. You control it. You don't eat anymore. The next step, the eating drive is gone. The need to eat is gone. You know what? It's not submerged anymore. It's gone. But there's still a resistance in a spiritual eating. Whatever barrier is left doesn't create an entity or rather a drive for itself. When the guf is only a presence and it's no longer pressure, that's the word. Pressure versus presence. In Olam Hazeh, the guf exerts a pressure. Feed me. Take care of me. In the year 6,000, the pressure dies. Or rather, the pressure does exist. I'm sorry. There's a pressure. Feed me. It is. But the pressure is shut off. You don't have to do it. And you can still survive. But there's still a pressure. In the 7,000 to the 8,000 year, the pressure dies entirely. And all that's left is the presence. So there's no such thing as an independent drive to eat physically. What happens is that now there's only a spiritual drive to eat. In its form. But there's a slight presence of the resistance to truly enjoy spiritual eating. And then finally in the last step, from 9,000 and on, 10,000 years, the presence, or even the resistance to spiritual eating dies. So that even the presence of the mask, of the guf, of the yetzirah, of the chassan, call it what you want, or the nachash, it's all the same thing, finally disappears. So that by the 10,000 year and on, it is skin on the neshama. It has no pressure, and it has no presence. And then, in that 10,000 year, starts Olam Haba, in earnest. But Ayin Le'Ra saw, no eye has ever seen that. Because that means at that point, that existence is static. It is not dynamic. It can't go from point A to B. You see, existence is what it is, and is what it is, and what it shall always be. Time changes, everything changes to accommodate Olam Haba, and that's what Olam Haba finally becomes. Important concept here. It is a different existence. It is a different type of existence. So that, just like we are unable to understand a world which is not even the shaman, where there is no physical world. Because everything undergoes this change here. This is the most powerful change in all of existence. Each one of these levels has its own light. It has its own level of existence, its own laws, which are not even comprehensible by the other level. In any sense, it's less comprehensible than we can comprehend Malachim. We cannot comprehend Malachim. Thing of what that is. These levels are extraordinarily difficult and high. The Kabbalah refers to this in a certain way. In the Kabbalah, and I'll just mention it, although I never bring down Kabbalah. It's my rule, never bring a Kabbalah. But in the Kabbalah, all this is brought down and is referred to as the Adam Kadmon, or called the primordial man. And it says that when God first created the world, and so on, and his first spiritual forces began to come out, they began to come out from this primordial man. It's a total metaphor. It's not a real man. And at first there was the light. I forget exactly. I think the light from the hair came out first, and I think the nose. I forget exactly the order. The eyes and the ears and the mouth and so on. So there are different levels, and each light came out from a different part of the face. You see, this is all a metaphor. What is this talking about? It's not a face. It's no man. These are the lights. You see, or the levels of existence of Olam Haba. So what happened was that we went from Olam Haba backwards to Olam Hazeh, and then we go from Olam Hazeh back up to Olam Haba. When the world was first created, the level of existence was Olam Haba, because that was the level of Chesed. God created the Neshama and said, I want to give you an Olam Haba here. So the light of Olam Haba is here, you see. But when the Neshama said, I can't handle it, the Baruch began to diminish it in certain ways, so that Olam Haba slowly went backwards to Olam Hazeh. Our job is to reverse the direction and bring it back to Olam Haba. That's what it says, Ein Chodesh, Davar Chodesh Takasama. There's nothing new under the sun. Olam Haba was once here with Nam L'Ksufa. We've got to create Olam Haba without Nam L'Ksufa. Yes. Grammatically, Olam Haba means the world that was, or that came. That's what it means, Olam Haba. You see, what you really should say is the world to come is Olam Sheyavo, that will come. Because in essence, Olam Haba really in certain ways has already been here. You see, it's been here in the notion that it was at the outset of creation. It was a world of Chesed. Now the Ksufa, or the inability of the Neshama to relate to it, reduced it so that Olam Haba, you see, backrolled itself to Olam Hazeh, so that now existence can grow and move. But the ultimate purpose is that we will again reverse direction and go back up. You see. But this time, we will have done it. Not God. And we will not have any problem doing what, keeping the Olam Haba that we have. Right. Okay, so this is the essential concept. Olam Haba is a place of trial, of nisayon, of building, of growing. Hence, time, existence is a different caliber. Olam Haba is a place of what? Of static, of enjoying, of resting, and menucha, you see, of a place of simcha. But it's a static concept. You go from Olam Haba to Olam Haba progressively. But in the process, there are two things going on. Tahara, Kedusha, which is the acquisition of the power needed to transform, and then finally Zichor. And what we've done tonight is outline the various different steps that are taking place within a basic time frame. Probably the most important concept tonight in terms of your own avoda, you see, is the concept of Yichra Mestata Nichra Mezgala, that there is no such thing as a true Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is really a damaged Yetzer Tov. So the next time you think of listening to your Yetzer Hara, say to yourself, wait a minute, I can have this very same simcha 1,000,000,000 times more. Why do I want to be satisfied with this half-baked measure? You see? That's the concept. Why do I want to give up this simcha in its pure form and run after the simcha in its what? In its adulterated form, in its primitive form. That's what you have to ask yourself every time you're faced with the Yetzer Hara. Because the Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov are the same thing. God is the Yetzer Tov, God is the Yetzer Hara. The only difference is to what extent does the Rebbeinu Shem want to reveal himself. That's simply what it's all about. We have concluded the series of the Mashiach.